I say you are listening to, you are absolutely listening to the George Espinlove Show, coming to you live from the Funny Farm. Now, with no further ado, here comes Georgie!
Thank you. Ooh, warm and fuzzy. You make me feel so warm and fuzzy on the inside. Thank you, Charlie, for that fine introduction. And to our friends down the street, around the corner, across this great nation, and around the world, welcome to the George Espinlove Show, coming to you from the Funny Farm in a place called Our World. Now remember, we have no idea where our world is. None whatsoever. And really, we don't care where it's at. We're just content to live here. We don't have a mailing address, a specific mailing address. We don't even have a mailbox up out front. But we do have this, because we're so modern and sophisticated here in our world. We have email, just like you do in the real world. And yes, if you send email from the real world, it'll come to our world, and we'll answer it in our world and send it right back to you in the real world. Just simply send us George C.E. That's George C.E. at Comcast.net. George C.E. at Comcast.net. We're all right. Now, we invite you to come and become a full-fledged loon. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to sign anything. All you have to do is come on in. And by you tuning in to the show, that signifies that you want to become a full-fledged loon. So we welcome you to the family, and we ask that you let your hair down. Don't worry about what people says. Don't worry about what people thinks. Don't worry about if someone turns that eyebrow up at you and gives you that funny look. Just don't pay attention to them. We want you to express yourself, and we want you to have fun. That's right. That's right. That's why we're here. Yeah. Yeah, the crowd loves it. All right. Come on, let's get on. All right, yeah. Way to go, Isaac. All right, let's move on. All right, that's good. Thank you, class. We have one of those sit on the edge of your chair type shows tonight. In just a moment, we are going to bring a man on by the name of Chad Meek. And he is going to take us on a journey. If you like UFOs, aliens, abductions, strange happenings, but true episodes of real life things, then you are going to enjoy tonight's show. Get up on the edge of your seat right now, because that's where you're going to be by the time this thing is done. We are going to have us a doozy, and we are going to bring on Mr. Chad Meek. Chad, welcome to the George Espinlove Show.
Hello, George. Thank you for having me.
Our privilege, our privilege. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let me see. I'm 6'3" and extremely good looking for anyone who wants to know out there. First of all, I've got green eyes, and so I'm a member of the club because they say that all space contactees have two things. They have one, they have green eyes, and the other, they have a little bit of Indian blood, and I have both. So, anyways, that's a little bit about myself. But, anyways, I am the writer and director of a movie called Giant Rock, the movie, which is a it's an epic UFO thriller, and it's based on true events that occurred at a place called Giant Rock, which is outside of about 41 miles from Palm Springs, California, out in the middle of the desert, out in the middle of nowhere. And really, it's actually the story centers around my uncle, George Van Tassel, who was the leader of the UFO contactee movement during the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and he died in 1978, and he continued, and that's where the story begins. It actually begins before him. A gentleman named Frank Kreitzer, who was a German immigrant, carved out the inside of this 8-story rock and actually lived out there. He had created an almost perfect environment to live in. It was warm in the winter and cool in the summer. He had positioned where he had dug it out perfectly. And prior to him, there were these paleo Indian tribes that would come from hundreds of miles around, hundreds, and worship at this rock because of its size. And the rock is a one of the largest freestanding boulders, on Earth, and it's literally it's something to be seen. It really is, and it has incredible energy. So, anyways, if you kind of want to move the pages up, a couple of years ago, actually about a year and a half ago, my neighbor, who happened to be a character actor from Hollywood, he'd played in various movies and things people might have remembered, like the movie Heat or Con Air, or he was just in just about every one of them as a character actor. He was always the first one that ended up killed, but his name's Kevin Gage, and I was chatting. We both had a place down in Mexico, and we were chatting next to each other, and he kept on asking me a lot of questions about my uncle and things like that. And first of all, I'd watched him. I said, gosh, I told my wife, I said, gee, this guy looks a lot like my uncle, George. And of course, we have a bunch of family photos and all that stuff. And sure enough, so it's kind of how it started. One thing led to another. He goes, he says, this would really be a great story for Hollywood, for someone to make a movie about, with all the various things that had occurred, out there, which... to give you an example of what, besides all the continual UFO activity, which it's almost a vortex. It just attracts UFO activity, and especially during that time period. But there were many people that from the 1947 on, when he was out there, that came out and watched the UFOs and experienced a lot of the UFO activity with them. One of his friends, which actually he had worked for, was a man named Howard Hughes, and aerospace, and he was his flight engineer. This is prior, and so the story kind of goes around some of these characters out there, and it's literally the who's who of that era that was interested in this, including some of the founders of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Also, they were out there also looking at this. So it's an intriguing place. From where I kind of came in the picture, our whole family lived out there, had kind of homesteaded out there at the time, and it had been going on for years and years, built, cabins, what have you, and so we lived out there with George and, in the area with my grandmother and aunts, uncles, cousins. We kind of had a little colony out there, and it was a great place to grow up. There was, it was extraordinary in that sometimes once a year, you'd wake up in the morning and look out back, and there would be thousands of people out in your backyard. and they'd be coming to my uncle's UFO space conventions, which were literally attracted, people who had experienced UFO abductions and things like that. And so that's kind of a snapshot of what the movie is going to be about. Of course, there's a lot of intrigue that goes along during the time period. Many people don't realize when we first started recording UFO contacts and what have you. It was a pretty new concept, and it really rattled all the governments for a lot of reasons, primarily because they thought that they had a priority in communicating with extraterrestrials. And this goes back to Churchill, and under the Freedom of Information Act, Churchill was so concerned about what they call the Foo Fighters over there, and he talked to FDR and Truman. He was so worried about if people believed in UFOs and experienced and had contact that they wouldn't want to do anything else, as in, go to church, or they wouldn't want to go to work, and they wouldn't want to pay taxes, and so that was their big concern. So when my uncle, with all his many thousands of followers, he became they were very, very he got on the radar. In fact, they put him on the America's Most Dangerous Persons list.
Wow.
Which is and the reason being was because he had contact with extraterrestrials, and so they were bugging his phone, trying to see what he was up to. My uncle was quite a character. He was an inventor and, an avid follower of some of the great inventors, from Tesla to, Edison, you name it. He just from a kid, he loved to invent things and loved to tinker around. And so with his communications with the space people and all that stuff, he came up with some pretty advanced ideas, and and actually had done them. So very, very interesting place and time. And as the years go by, most of the people have the principles that were out there, have since died. And I have had all kinds of urgings from almost ethereal places to do something so people won't forget that time, because these people were just absolute jewels, and they wanted to, what they wanted to do was make it so no one was afraid of coming out and saying that they had actually had contact with extraterrestrials and things like that. So anyways, it's kind of as you can probably gather, George, it's kind of an interesting subject matter, and one that I think people will love seeing. And we're doing this in it's not a mockumentary or a documentary. It's based on true events. Our budget seems to be growing because of what we want to do with it, and so it's not like a smaller independent. We have some people from some studio people that have crossed over and started working with us, and so we're doing everything right to get it in a theater where all the listeners can essentially see what I'm talking about firsthand. So
yeah. Before we went on the air, I told you this stuff intrigues me, and when I first started looking, and ladies and gentlemen, you can go to the website giantrockmovie.com, giantrockmovie.com. When I went there, and I saw this big rock, 70 feet high and over 5,000 square feet, I thought, holy moly! And it seems like everything centers around this rock, right?
Yes, it does. My uncle had built a restaurant out there, and actually had there's a dry lake out there, and so what he did is he graded it and put up windsocks and things like that, and had airplane fuel. And people would actually fly out there. This has gone on the 50s, and a lot of people like Howard Hughes used to come visit out there too. They like to fly their planes out from L.A. and land there, and my aunt would, she would always, they had a restaurant, small restaurant, and so we'd feed them and gas them up if they wanted, and what have you, or drink coffee or whatever. So it was a really kind of intriguing place to be around. But in association with that, my uncle, he built a thing called, and this sounds, I don't know I don't know the age group of some of your guests. I'm sure they're anywhere from 10 to 100, but some of those people might remember the old Long John Neville show. Well, my uncle was on the Long John Neville show quite regularly with Jackie Gleason. They broadcast that thing out of New York, and from the very start, he had built this thing called the Integratron, which really what it was is a cell rejuvenation machine. It's still standing today and actually still operational. A couple women own it, and it's still, they've taken really good care of it. They purchased it from, I think, one of my cousins or some of the families a while back, and they've kept it up. And they actually have people that come out there and they take these things called sound baths. Well, the Integratron was the message that he got from the space people that, and there were other components that were supposed to go into this thing also. But it's all made of wood, and when you go in it, it has this incredible energy, and this is just, fairly close to the rock also. And people feel immensely better, and it was modeled after Moses' tabernacle and what have you. But it literally was built without any metal screws. It's just perfect, and it's structurally, it's just beautiful. And of course, they can go on the web and look at all that. But he did some interesting things, and some of his legacy still kind of hangs around there. I ran into, I like to tell this one story because part of my business career, I've ran energy companies and mining companies, and occasionally we have to go out there and pitch various people on, capital participation and things like that, and I was out at Morton Thiokol, which they make rockets, and for the government and things like that. And this one guy, we're sitting at this conference table, and we had a group of their scientists, and at the time we had a pretty special remote sensing device that we wanted to get both, economic and physical participation on it. And these guys had some technology that we were interested in, and we thought they'd been interested in some of ours. But make a long story short, we're in the conference room. This guy keeps looking at me, and he goes, "Where are you from?" And I go, "Well," I said, "Well, I'm from California." He goes, "No, where?" He says, "Where are you from in California?" And I go, "Well, I don't think you'd even know it, but it's a little place called, out in the desert called Giant Rock." And he goes, and the first thing he says, "Do you know a guy named George Van Tassel?" And I go, "Well, I'm kind of a little bit sheepish." And I go, "Well, yeah," and I'm not really quite clear where this is going to go. And he goes, I knew this guy, George Van Tassel," and I go, "Well, he's my uncle. He was my uncle. I grew up out there." And he says, "Oh, you're kidding." And he says, "I would have never gotten in. I would." And he was a rocket scientist. He had a PhD, and he said, "I would never gotten this business had it not been for your uncle and his inspiration with some of his ideas on technology and things like that." And I go, "Well, that's great, but George, I've had these experiences literally from all over the world, and from Japan from Tokyo to former Yugoslavia. I ran into a group of Tesla people that were keeping some of his works alive and doing some of that stuff, and they had known of my uncle. So it was really funny how no matter where I would go around the world, people would know about this remote place and this era out there, and it was very, very inspirational. Another thing that goes along the same line, I had a director of mine. He grew up in New York City, which is funny, and we were talking, and he says, "Oh, George Van Tassel." He says, "Oh God." He says, I used to wake up, set my alarm clock for 1 o'clock at night, because Lon John Neville's show, I guess, one at night. It was a precursor to Coast to Coast. He says, I'd get up and listen to him, as far as this. So anyway, so I had a lot of this very interesting encounters there, too. The Rock, which is, carved out, Frank Kreitzer actually lived out there and had done, actually, he was a very Frank Kreitzer before my uncle. He went out there in 1930. And my uncle met him at the time. He was living in Santa Monica, California, working as a mechanic. Of course, that was a time of the Depression, and jobs were scarce. So he went to work for his uncle. And this guy comes in with this rickety old, I guess it was an Essex automobile, and needed some car repairs. And so my uncle, got to talking with him, and that's when he first met this Frank Kreitzer guy. And this Frank Kreitzer person, who was a German immigrant, couldn't speak very good English, but he was pretty animated, and he had this vision about this large stone out there, and he was going to go out there and do various experiments. So in the movie, pretty much tracks a lot of the movement of when my Uncle George and Frank Kreitzer met in Santa Monica. It's an era piece. Then how essentially Frank Kreitzer goes out there on his own. He actually was prospecting. He was looking for iridium, rhodium, all these different, very, very, they're called earth metals, and which are very valuable, which he knew that they were very valuable. So he went out there and prospected for a year, and he had a large, he had a shortwave radio out there, and he spoke German and broken English. Well, this was in 1941, and of course we went to war. We went to war with all these people, and so he kept on broadcasting the shortwave. Well, a lot of the people that were hearing him were under the impression that he was giving away secrets and things like that. And so the sheriffs, the San Bernardino County sheriffs, went out there and they tried to get him out. Well, at the time, he'd already lived out there for about 11 years, and he was kind of paranoid, and he didn't want to come out. He yelled at him. He says, "Get off my property! I've done anything." And so what they did is they mistakenly threw some, not mistakenly, intentionally threw some gas canisters down there, and Kreitzer and my uncle had, they had dynamite down there because they were prospecting, and so it got ignited, and literally what happened, there was such an explosion, I guess, that it could be heard from forever, and he was down there and he was eviscerated in there, so he was killed down in that whole thing. And then after that, my uncle, a few years later, came out there, and he, this is in 47, and he was dead set on kind of continuing some of Frank Kreitzer's, some of his interesting work and thoughts and what have you. And so who wasn't a dummy, and he kind of took up the mantle for him, and that's when our whole family went out there, and like I said, homesteaded, and it was a very, very unique time period because everyone thought he was crazy at the time, because he was kind of on the inside of some of the, especially with aerospace, and they had, some of the early UFO contactees, was starting to occur, the Arnold and the Roswell and the, mini Roswell and all these events. So some of the people that my uncle knew, they knew that there was actually, technology exchange and things like that. And so that was in part why my uncle went out there, because he thought, well, it'd be, if there were, he wanted to have a welcome place for him. And one night, a group of spacemen had landed out there on the dry lake and had literally woke him up in his sleep. And at the time, what everyone would do out there in the desert, they'd drag their beds out in the out in the open, because it was it would cool down. It was just nice to sleep out in the cool breeze. And some aliens, people came and it woke them up. And my uncle first thought there was somebody that had some car trouble or something like that, because, but no, and lo and behold, and so they actually took him up into their spaceship, and he had seen everything that they had. And they began to talk with him and chat with him and say, "Hey, listen, we've heard your meditations and we've heard your prayers, and we have some information we'd like you to take." And that's when the whole idea came with the Integratron, and he went full bore on it, and went to town and got it, and enlisted some people from like Howard Hughes. He had kicked in some money, and they built this. Shortly after, they started building it. So that was his whole thing is that he wasn't interested in charging him money for it, because he felt, and back in the day, and of course, Howard Hughes was an incredible inventor himself, so they were kind of like-minded. They were just innovators, and they wanted to create things that would help people, and help people live, to 150 years versus, the normal, at the time, I think was 72. So, and the Integratron was designed to be, for anyone that wanted treatment to go there and receive treatment and get relief. And of course, I don't know how. What's interesting about that is my uncle really struggled trying to get all the information, all the components, and to make it work the way they originally intended. And about a month before his death, he put out in the Proceedings, which was his newsletter, that he had found, that he had been given some other information that will make that happen. And then my uncle died a month later. He ended up in some hotel about 100 miles away that the family could never figure out what he was doing there. So a lot of very strange things were occurring out there with my uncle. He wasn't doing anything. He was about the least materialistic. He was incredibly interested and was trying to work on various free energy device and out there and do some various stuff. But they apparently, and he was very suspicious about the energy companies and things like that didn't really want that kind of technology, because of course if there were free energy, then of course you wouldn't be using a gasoline-powered car. Mm-hmm. And I remember as a child, he used to tell me all the time. He says, "This is ridiculous." He says, "We're burning things to push something." He was talking about the law of thermodynamics, and I didn't really know. I really didn't know what he was talking about at the time. But I went. But some of the conversations were very, very. He was always trying to educate people and trying to get them to live better and to do that. And like I said, he would never charge a dime for anyone to go into the Integratron to get their health going. And so that was something exciting. But there's been many things that are going on out there. There was a person called Jack Parsons, who was one of the original, actually was the founder of JPL. He was out there. And another person that many will probably hear about is a person called L. Ron Hubbard of the Scientology. He was out there during the 40s too, trying to figure out what my uncle was up to, talking to space people and things like that. So you can imagine how fascinating it would be if you were just a young child. You're sitting there watching a bad connection with an aerial TV out there, and then seeing your uncle talk in front of about a gazillion people, and it was really fascinating to do that. He was such larger than life, as far as with what he was up to, and he did a lot of talking, a lot of seminars and things like that. But the big thing is that he managed to get himself. Oh, he also too he made the cover of Life magazine. One of the things that he did was he was one of the first people who channeled. They referred to him as the original space channeler, which he would talk to various entities down in this electromagnetic rock. I mean, there's just this incredible energy that was going on. It was this conductor, and so he would literally have these channeling sessions every Friday with a group, and he would actually talk to space people through what he called, I think, a tensor beam, and he was trying to explain how he had done it, and he says, well, it's like turning a channel. He says, I'll turn a channel here, in his mind. He had that ability, and he would actually have conversation with these entities out in, so he was actually given the original credit when people talk about channelers, spiritual channelers and things like that. That's where they got it from, was him, because he was trying to describe what he did and how he communicated with the aliens. He says, well, it was almost like turning a channel. So they pick up on that. So some of these very interesting tidbits, as far as they're attributed to him, are fascinating. But I also, one of the things that is really where everything was situated, as far as it was connected with the various pyramids. The rock is actually on a parallel of the pyramids and some of these other sacred centers around the world, and that are part of this this high energy grid. And so it had some interesting components. But anyways, that's briefly it. We're doing a movie. I think people will like the movie. It's very exciting from our perspective to get this material out there. We kind of, one of the things we don't hold anything back about my uncle, and he was unfortunately I guess one of his weaknesses, he loved the women, and we've got the whole thing in there. We're just getting it out there pretty much the way it is, but the story in itself is exciting, So, but anyways, that's what that's what we're doing, and we want people to, we look to have it released somewhere. Our guess is we're still a ways. We're pre-production. We've got our script and our trailers done, and we'll start putting them up on the website, which again is www.giantrockthemovie.com. We'll have our trailers out. We've got the rough cut done, and we've got our budget, and so we're in what they call pre-production. And but we've had a lot of financial interest from several studios. I remember when, simply because of the subject matter, people are fascinated by the subject, and we see all kinds of very interesting tidbits out there. As far as like in the Netherlands, there was an incredible sighting that was done there. A woman had picked that off. That was just recently. So they're occurring quite regularly. And we know that the government has known about these things for the last 60, 70 years, and have essentially ignored everyone's disclosure request. Another thing that people don't realize too is they for many years they of course had said that there were no UFOs, that they were. For the Roswell incident, and the other one, I think it's the Great Plains incident, which is just north of Mexico and New Mexico, that didn't exist. And then what they did is they created a law on the Federal Registry where it's actually illegal to talk to an extraterrestrial, and that you're subject to being thrown in jail for a year. And there's a pretty hefty fine. So Kevin and I, we kind of laugh about that, and we've had this been running joke is that we don't want to go to jail because we talk to aliens. And but people say, well, there can't be a law like that. And if people look very closely, there is one. It's on the Federal Registry, which we were trying to figure out. Well, they got to make up their mind. Either there is aliens, or there are, or they're not aliens.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so, anyways,
if there isn't, then you shouldn't have a law.
right.
I wonder when you were saying that, and I was trying to keep myself from chuckling. I wonder if they have to film you talking to an alien, because you may be talking to yourself. You know.
That's right. It's so funny. You're right. We just laugh about it. But we know that's it's I do some when we're out there looking for partners and things like that for our movie. I do some seminars, and invariably I will be looking at a group of suits and what have you, and I'll do my PowerPoint presentation. I'll show them exactly what it is, what we're doing, et cetera, how much money they can make, all that stuff, doing the whole money thing, as far as the whole movie. And then what'll happen is every time I do one, I'll get one person that'll come to me and they'll say, Chad, I need to talk to you. and I know what it's about. It's always the same thing. It's they wanted to share their own experience, whether it be their own sighting. And one guy had actually really went in quite a lot of detail, and he was actually had business out near the Rock and things like that. As he was in the automotive business, supply business, and part of his territory was Las Vegas to that area and even south. And he was telling me some of the incredible events that occurred to him. But it's so funny unless someone feels safe to discuss this subject, then people, a lot of times they won't. Mm-hmm. But I'm always surprised the people that, that come up to me after a presentation and just say, oh my gosh, I got to tell you this. And it's kind of like they're kind of getting a little bit something off their chest or something like that. I don't know. And, and so I sit there and listen, I said, well, I know what it is. I've had my own experiences and things like that as a child. We went through several abductions and things like that out there, and then in other places too. I can remember pretty much everything going. Being kind of trajectored out of my bunk bed, and then raising the window up, and then taking me out, and then putting me on the ship, and then I'm up there, and they actually do this. They do their various testing, and then I don't have any recollection after that. I went through some regression therapy, and at the time it was just too painful. I had to get off the table. But, I was listening to Travis Walton of the Fire in the Sky, movie that they had done several years back, and everyone, that's the question he always gets asked is, well, haven't you been through this regression therapy? And he goes, hell no, I don't want to do that again. So it's kind of like, I think that I think what happens is that they monitor various people that they, I guess had an interest in or whatever. And these goes along with all kinds of things. I mean, they just, the why, I don't have any answers as far as why they do, but I was kind of making a joke about it. There seems to be a correlation between the Anglo-Saxon people, or North European people, with mixed Indian blood. That's of extreme interest to them. Mm-hmm. And the other thing too is the green eyes, which I think is really fascinating too, because there's only 2% of the whole world has green eyes, but there's this overwhelming amount of people that have been abducted with both this Indian Anglo blood and the green eyes. So there's something there. I don't know, but there was this huge study done at Harvard, and it was 1991.
and it was on the abduction whole thing, and they had done a pretty comprehensive study, and they had various control questions that were just really designed to kick everyone out. I mean, they're very, very stringent and very, very careful. But what they did is they came out of there with an amount that they went back and they redid their math on the study, their test results, and then they got that number. And then they went back in, and they kept on having it because they just didn't. They figured that the numbers were too high. Their first number that came out as far as actual contact with aliens in some manner was about 4 million, 4 million people, which was so high that they couldn't figure it out. But they did the right control questions, and so they went back and they halved it. They kept on qualifying it. They finally ended up with about 10. They finally just put a number to 10%, about 400,000 people that they believe actually, based on their control questions and their study, had actually been abducted. So there's a whole bunch of people that have been abducted. Many, many, many who have no knowledge, conscious knowledge that they actually had been abducted. I think that my awareness of these things really stem from the environment that I grew up in. I mean, but still, even that, there are all kinds of very interesting difficulties when you're going through that, because even though I was, what my uncle did is he counseled a lot of flyers, a lot of military people that had actually had encounters. And he was the go-to guy, at least in this country, if you had seen an alien or encountered. What it does is it rattles your world, your whole linear viewpoint on what's reality and et cetera, et cetera. It gets completely blown out the window. And so they would seek out him. And I remember many, many occasions seeing a lot of military planes out there, and I couldn't figure out why, on helicopters and things like that out there. And I could never figure out what they were doing out there. But apparently, and I learned this, that my uncle, he was, because he'd had a lot of experiences with his own self, and knew a lot of, had the history of the whole thing. That was what he did. So they went out and talked to him, and he'd kind of bring him back. But I've always, it's been a very, I've had several incredible situations, are almost they're unexplainable. I remember I was talking one day to, I remember I had a radio announcer who was moonlighting, selling radio advertising, and he had called me at my office, and I was so fascinated, about it. I said, well, I'm talking to him, and I go, gosh, you sound like a radio guy. He says, well, that's my day job. And I said, well, okay, that's good. And so I got to talking to him, and somehow we got on my uncle's. And I had a small toy spaceship appear in my hand. And some of this stuff, I mean, it's just so incredible. And I kept on looking at this toy spaceship, and I told him, I said, I was talking about my uncle, and I had this toy spaceship. And I go, there's a toy spaceship in my hand. I don't know where the thing came from, and I couldn't get off it. It was really, but I'm still talking to him. And then as I put the phone down, for the life of me, I couldn't find that toy spaceship. So I don't know whether I'd be getting messages or whatever from this is after he died and what have you. Another time I'd finished the script, and Kevin Gage and myself and a couple of friends of ours, they had a kind of a party, and so we were asked to read the script. As a special treat, we asked to read the screenplay, and we did, and for these folks, and we were literally, we'd see there were books falling off the bookcases and things like that that had never been untouched for years and years and years. So we've always kind of had this whole thing that, we don't know whether we're doing this movie or whether the movie's doing us, as far as this. I think we're getting a lot of encouragement to, from up on high, because I think it's, I think it's really a crying shame because it's a part of our legacy. If most people, I mean, obviously we're living, breathing entities, you know, and intelligent beings, and so I don't think it's too hard to extrapolate that there must be something out there, you know, as far as that. It's not a real basic level, you know, that there's something else out there, you know, too. And what we have found through various Freedom of Information Acts and things like that, and information we've got, is that a lot of this information has just been withheld from us, which it's surprising. It's because it's our legacy. I mean, just, you know, it's our legacy to know about these things. I mean, we have a right to know of these things. You know, there's so much things that are going on right now in the country and what have you. And you know, my gosh, you go to an airport and it's like, you know, it's just really funny. And recently in the news, we've had all this thing where they're monitoring all our conversations and computers and things like that. That's very Orwellian. And people would have never thought in a million years that our government would be involved in that kind of things. But it really started from a long time ago. It really started off with the space contactee people. And there was what they did is they actually created a group, their own special group called COINTELPRO. And what their mission was is to monitor and to discredit anybody that claimed that they had came in contact with a UFO, or an extraterrestrial. And I think back, I'm thinking, you know, we heard rumors of all this stuff about wiretapping of my uncle and things like that, and some of the Project Blue Book people, they had come out and they had looked at, you know, all this stuff and out there, and we knew that they were out there, but we just couldn't figure out what they were doing because my uncle, and he was fairly naive, he assumed that he was on the same page or the same team, and he was just as American as anyone else, but that wasn't the case. They didn't, and they had told him on several occasions that they didn't like what he was doing. They didn't like that, and he had felt so compelled to do that as kind of a mission to, you know, keep people informed, apprised, and what have you, and of this. But I've had experiences myself that, you know, are very intriguing. One, I had a sighting we were living in Utah at the time, and we had this very large rainbow ship that came through the valley, and there were, I had saw it, and it was a perfect rainbow that was moving. It was probably the shape of, my guess, about 3 or 4 football fields. It was huge, and it was moving, you know, completely. The only thing I could see was the rainbow round part around it. The only thing, I couldn't really see anything else because of, it just, you know, wasn't visually, but I just see that thing just go, so I turn on the news, and I remember the guy's name, the announcer. He was an announcer named Dick Norris, and he says thousands of people have been calling in about this rainbow flying saucer that had gone from the valley for 100 miles up towards Idaho, and he says, well, professionals have said it was an atmospheric, you know, quirk, just like the, you know, swamp gas, lights, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, there's just, you know, a weather balloon. It goes on the whole thing as the company line. And I went to my uncle's book. My uncle wrote several books, you know, about these subjects, and he actually described the rainbow ships and what they are. And what's so funny too is that rainbows go from ground to ground. They don't go around, and they don't go for 100 miles. But yet it's like there seems to be this concerted effort to kind of confuse everyone as far as what they're seeing. I've seen many of them, various things here, and I don't know what it is. I've often thought it might be something with I don't know. I've never understood why me in particular. Out of my family, my sister, and the only other sighting that I'd seen with my family is my older sister and my mother. We had seen a low flying saucer out in the desert. We took a walk out at night, and one had buzzed us right on the, it was about 200 feet above us, and it was impressive. And my mother at the time happened to be a non-believer before that, and she had nothing good to say about anyone that had, she didn't have anything good to say about the whole UFO thing. But it was amazing, her conversion, and I mentioned her often. She never had a good thing to say about UFOs before then. Then afterwards, she didn't have a bad thing to say about UFOs. So, anyways, so I think that the non-believers are perhaps maybe one UFO sighting away from being a believer on this stuff. But people make excuses to me all the time. Well, I believe in this, and or they want to point to some biblical thing. Of course, I ask them various, intriguing questions like, well, what do you think Ezekiel's wills were, and it sure sounds like a UFO to me. And there's all kinds of very interesting references, especially in the Old Testament and all this stuff. As far as to this, I think that they were trying to tell us something in their best words as far as what's going on at that. But it's always fascinating because some people get very, very uncomfortable with the subject matter, and I think it's just because it just blows their reality of it, and I don't know. But it is fascinating, and I'm, like I said, I don't know whether I've been cursed or blessed. I mean, I've had an interesting life. I've had mining operations in Alaska, and I've had oil concessions in Honduras, and I've done all this kind of stuff here. But it's fascinating that, and I kind of had my other life, and I did that. But simultaneously, I would always get involved in or at least aware of what's going on with the whole UFO movement and things like that. And some of the old timers would always contact me, and what they wanted me to do, and they had asked me to do it, 10 years ago, is to get the group back up and get it going, and that it was time, and I just said, I didn't want to be a target, for that kind of thing. And so when the opportunity came to do a movie, and I thought it was a pretty safe venue to do it, and I thought, yeah, we'll do a movie, and we'll let people know, and what they can do is they can go and learn a lot of stuff. There's so much stuff about my uncle in the public domain, George Van Tassel, on the internet, that they can really learn what happened and what he did, and some of the things I've talked about, here. And it's just fascinating. It really, especially that time era, and they were confronted with some of these extraordinary events, all these various people in the 40s and 50s. And they didn't understand what was going on, but they had the courage of their conviction to come out and mention it and share it. And so that was really kind of a very, and they were a close-knit group, and too. But very very interesting. I encourage everyone to essentially, of course, go to our website, and we have a few things on there, and we love it, and go to ours at Giant Rock the Movie. That would be good. But also just type in George Van Tassel, and if you remember my name, Chad Meek, you can get there too. So we have a lot of information and things like that. And also too, one of the things we're doing is we're going to need a lot of extras out there, and if we would like people to kind of keep, if they want to get their face on a on the movie or whatever, they can keep in touch with us. And, we're going to throw a couple of very nice. We're going to have one of the plans is to have a fairly large concert out there for some of our extras. And we have a couple of, I can't release the name of some of the entertainers at this time. I'm probably about a week or 2 weeks away from it, but we're going to have some very interesting people out of the country western venue that are going to participate in the movie, and as actors, and but what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of we're going to do a nice venue out there so people can we'll shoot them as the crowd goes, and with our cameras and things like that, and then they can listen to the music, what have you, and then they can go to the movie and see themselves on the big screen.
Wow, that is so exciting.
Yeah, so I'm sure this is kind of a very interesting, I'm sure fascinating thing for you. I've had a lot of radio. I'm just curious. Have you ever known anybody that had a UFO experience, or in friend or family, or
none in my family that I know of, or any friends. The only ones, the only ones that I know that have had an experience has been the guests that we've had on our shows.
Okay.
And it is so incredible because as I listen to each one of our guests, and they're from here, there, and everywhere, that's into UFOs and aliens and so on and so forth. As I listen to each one of them, probably none knows the other, but when I listen to them, they all seem to tie together with something or some things that each one of them says, and it comes out like like you put a quilt together, a patch here, a patch there, and pretty soon it just keeps moving out, and you've got this big, beautiful quilt when it's all done. And so that's the ones that I've listened to. I ask people all the time, and they look at me like, Espinlov, you fell out of a wheelbarrow and bumped your head. that might have really taken place, but nonetheless, nobody has told me that they have, and I try to ask it. When they look at you really strange. Of course, I'm used to that. 65 years, I've been looked at a lot of ways, but anyhow, they look at me with that strange look in their eyes, and I'll say, "No, look, I'm serious. Have you ever encountered a UFO or an alien? Have you ever encountered something like that?" And no, or I still think you're crazy, but I know they're out there.
Yeah, sure. It's funny too. I've had some benefits too, and I one experience I had that I was for some reason I had some severe. I had these boils that were literally all over my body from, and went to the doctor and, said, hey, please do. And they gave me lotions and medication and things like that, and they were just getting bigger, and they were very grotesque. I mean, I was having trouble walk. Do it, and they would itch so incredible, and no one could figure out what they were, and I had no idea what they were. And some of the things that I've kind of had a couple of my uncle, and I think he had this strong connection with them, and this is a bit after he had died, and I one time I was beside myself because I really didn't know what I thought I was going to have to go to the hospital. I was going to have to do something but they couldn't figure out why these boils were occurring, and my wife, we were getting really nervous. I didn't know, because it wasn't. They took blood tests and it wasn't any cancerous or anything like that, but I was getting them all over my armpits and everything like that, and we thought it might be some sort of allergy or something, but we just couldn't figure out what it was, and And so I'd kind of given up, and I just kind of had slightly just thought, well, maybe I better do some meditation, and so I just started, got in a warm bath and started just counting backwards, and all of a sudden I was having these out-of-body experiences, and so apparently what happened was somebody up there had pitied me, and I could vaguely see these entities, just pull me up, and I'm going through the galaxy. I'm almost hitting like a wormhole, and I was, and I was seeing all the beauty and all that stuff up there, and was really having this out of body experience, and I was pulled up. And then I was asked a question, and it was after this place this far, we're not going to be able to get you back. It says you're going to have to go on, and you're going to have to come with us. And a lot of this was blocked my memory, and as far as the exact specifics, but I just remember going up there, and I said, no, I have to get back with my wife and my kids and my business and all that stuff, and as soon as I said that, I was transferred back down, and I did not have one boil or anything. I was completely spontaneously cured. Now, it was the equivalent of a very religious experience, and I frankly don't know and don't care, as far as this whole experience. But I do remember hands pulling me up and doing that. So I didn't visually see any spaceships or anything like this, but all I do know is the results. Mm-hmm. The results were I came back down and I did not have one boil on my body. So I know that there's something that is been looking out for me, and I think I go back in time, and a lot of time, part of my other avocation is I do comparative religion, and so I study a lot of things about the ancient, the Vedics and some of the ancient literature and things like that, and they seem to be describing these extraterrestrials, and so I think that for the most part they're benevolent. I think that there are also less benevolent, or they're more notorious than others too. And it's just kind of like down here, there's some really good, decent people, people that that you can trust and what have you. And then we have some others that they're not, So I think it pretty much goes all through the universe. You have both good and bad, and I think there's been some horrible experiments going on. I think that the cattle mutilations can't be ignored, as far as that. And like, again, I don't know exactly why they would do this, but we do know that when we have above ground nuclear testing, that there seems to be an extraordinary amount of sightings that occur. And I've actually kind of figured out that this place, and people say, well, why would they come here? Well, this may be, in fact, a atypical Garden of Eden. We have water, we have, and what have you. We have tremendous amounts of water. We have vegetation. It's getting a little crowded here, but I think that, as comparatively speaking, this is some sort of very extraordinary place, this planet Earth. And I think when they get especially the above ground test, and incidentally, that was the other thing too, is my uncle, they had told him in 1950, this is an interesting thing too, in 1950, in one of his channels, he says, tell these people to stop blowing and don't use the, these above ground testing and the H-bomb, and so actually what he did, and that's on our website too, and people can Google this. The story is, they call it UFOs over Washington, D.C. And what my uncle did was, in 1952, around July the 2nd, he had this channeling session, and they told him to tell the authorities to stop doing this, to stop doing this above ground nuclear testing, that is going to irreparably harms not only your own environment, but they claim that there was parallel universes going on, that it actually tears the sky and that it's doing a tremendous amount of damages. Well, at the time, a lot of these UFO sightings would occur right after these, and I think it was just because I think that perhaps that extraterrestrials actually have a stake in this place also. I think we're all part of the same community. But to make a long story short, my uncle had sent certified mail to the President Truman, the Air Force, Life magazine, what was the other one? I think the Tribune in L.A., Los Angeles, and various places, and said that there was going to be a gigantic flyover of UFO, of spaceships over Washington, D.C. And gave them the dates. And, of course, that, you send a telegram like that, you get on the radar really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened. It happened exactly the date that it did. They had this incredible presence of UFO spaceships over Washington, D.C. Everyone had, literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people had saw them. The President had saw them, et cetera, et cetera. And shortly thereafter, that's when they got they put him on the cover of Life magazine. In fact, it's on my website. You can see the picture of him on Life magazine on there if you get to it. This is some of the stuff that we're dealing with. Some of it is, it's really, you get in this whole truth is stranger than fiction. And as far as the mystery and all this other stuff that go along with this, and it gets into the incredible. I know, I sit there and I listen to myself and I say, my God, what am I saying here? I know what it's, I've seen the telegrams, the copy of Life magazine. I know it occurred the way it exactly occurred, and it was proven. And but at the same time, Howard Hughes came out shortly thereafter about the dangers of above-ground nuclear testing. But at the time, we were, of course, in the height of the Cold War, and it appeared, like today, I guess, that it was unpatriotic to mention something that it was so clearly evident. And I've spent a lot of time, in fact, I held the record for amount of wells drilled out in the state of Nevada. So I was out in some of the areas, and I held thousands and thousands of acres out there, in concessions, and both there in southern Utah. We ran into some of the ranchers out there, and they literally, a lot of people, they would stand out there and look at these. They would do these above ground tests, and of course the cloud would go all the way through to eastern Nevada and western Utah, and those ranchers would stand out there and look at them. Mm-hmm. And their cattle and everything like that would die. But at the time, the government was so naive as far as they were actually had military people near these blasts and and expecting them to live. And so the cancer rate in those areas it was pandemic. It was like everyone had gotten cancer and all that stuff. So we live in a very it's very, very tricky with some of this stuff here, and of course, governments are made to control the whole people and what have you. But some of this stuff is it borders on the ridiculous. The same thing. I don't know. You might have been on the tail end of that, but do you remember when you were in school? That they had these drills where you'd run underneath your table. Mm-hmm. Did you ever experience that?
Yeah,
for a nuclear blast.
Yeah, we had to go to the all the way to the basement in the coal bin, what they called the coal bin. Yeah, and we would have to be in there. Yeah.
Well, they had us get under our desk, and I don't know if you've. The chances of surviving going downstairs or even going under your desk I mean, it's pretty preposterous. I've often trying to wonder, well, why do we do that? And I thought, well, I mean, obviously, if you saw a nuclear blast, there's not a lot that remains, and I guess it's all relative to how close you are, but still, I think it has to do with the mind control and the training to be, to be good citizens and things like that. But I don't know. It's funny. But they looked at my uncle as a radical and with radical ideas, and he was like a health nut. I mean, he wanted to take care of his body and everything like that. So, anyways, we have pictures. You'll see some of the pictures, and they had, we call them the tinfoil group, where I don't know if you remember that, where they put the tinfoil over their heads and little pyramids and things like that. I thought it was to avoid any kind of excess radiation. I mean, there's all kinds of classical, but at the era, I love the era, and too, one of the things that I've really enjoyed, and it's actually part of your legacy also during the time period, especially during the 50s and the early 60s, before everything kind of got with the various hippie generation, all this, it was very innocent. I mean, it was a very innocent time period, and being able to go back, and of course, we have. In fact, I have a meeting next week with a costume designer, and she's one of the best ones. But we want to get this right as far as the right garb, the right, all that stuff. So it is kind of fun to go back there and what have you. As far as I grew up on, I kind of grew up on black and white TV, so my perspective is a little bit different than others. We weren't very wealthy. In fact, we were fairly poor back there. As far as we were living out in the desert, the market was 10 miles away. But we had other things too, and we had this, and it's still beautiful. We've gone and done trailers out there, and if you can imagine, I go back and I just look at that, and everything's so small. I remember, as a little kid, everything was so huge back then, and but now it's a little small, but that's what we're doing. And as far as our the movie, I think people will really like it. I have a guy from that had worked for Warner Brothers. Actually, had quit Warner Brothers, just got tired of working for the studio system because it's. You have to go through 3 layers to make a decision, like any kind of big organization. I don't know what your background is and what you've had, but if you're in the studio, there's 3 or 4 people and legal, so no one can make a move unless somebody else has approved it and what have you. And even though this guy was a studio executive, and he's just in heaven working with us, because what we're doing is, we're instead of. And and the other thing too is that he used to hate the Hollywood accounting deal, and he'd see these guys literally budget boats and expensive automobiles out of a budget and all that, and so it would just drive him crazy. In fact he's actually a German also, so he just couldn't understand why people would do that, and people always. Through the years, movies and entertainment has stayed consistent, as far as the very profits. I think there was one year in 2009 that it dipped a little bit, but on balance, as far as an industry goes. And one of the problems that they have is again, this, kind of, creative accounting and things like that. So, a lot of people that have put money into movies haven't got a very decent return, and really, it's nothing other than pure studio theft. I mean, they figure out how to screw everyone out of their money, and so he told me, because he's we've been working very closely the last 3 months together. He says, you're not going to have any trouble as far as getting any money for this thing. He says, one thing about it is we'll actually pay them return. So I said, what, you mean that's all I have to do? He said, oh, yeah, it'd be surprising. He says, people are just so fed up with these guys. And we were, some of the stories that he told me, because he had worked with various very big production. He was telling me that in fact, Men in Black, which they've gone to 3, they've grossed over $500 million, and they just now said that they've broken even on their production thing, which is ludicrous. And he had worked with Stallone on some of the Rockies and shows, and he never got a dime till I think Rocky IV out of the production. So it's a different world and a different way of doing business. And I'm pretty much old school. And I've been in the energy business, and you get contracts and you do that, but you generally, the rule is that you pretty much do a lot of stuff on a handshake, and that's you're only as good as your word, and if your word's no good, then people find out real quick, and then no one will do business with you. And so, but anyways, we've kind of entered in this whole world. And originally, I was going to maybe sell the rights to the thing there, but then Kevin Gage had said, "Don't do that." He says you won't recognize your story. He says they'll try to turn it into a cartoon, and that's what we've really been seeing out there. And they keep on doing these Supermans and Ironmans and Avatar was a so-called UFO film, but they turn them into something else, and so what we have is a real live story with real people based on true facts. So the intellectual property, it's worth a tremendous amount of money, but even more importantly, it's that I get the story out and I get it right, and that people enjoy it. That's what's important. As far as to me, I'm not looking to make a cartoon or doing a lot of merchandising and things like that. But at any rate, that's kind of our thing. So we kind of took control of it, and and I wrote the screenplay, and it's 140 pages, and we've had a lot of a few people read it. They're in the industry, and they love it. It moves quickly. But one thing that I've heard is that, unlike a lot of the same movies that we are seeing out there, is that they're very entertaining. The movies we see today they're very entertaining, but you can't remember what they were about. Right. As far as if you get 2 hours away from the movie. So consequently, and what we have is we have a movie with the soul and a universal message, which is essentially, and we were talking about this earlier in the show, is just be who you are. Don't be ashamed. Don't make excuses. Whatever your truth is, just tell it. Tell it as best you can from your own perspective. Don't worry about what people think. Whatever it's okay to be you. Whatever your experience is, it's okay to be you. And don't buy into the whole materialistic, nonsense stuff. If I know that if anyone. It takes a couple of experiences as far as in one's life to really make you understand what is really important in your life. That's right. And it's the people that are with you in your life. And regardless of how much money you've got, if the people in your life are not healthy, happy, all the other stuff doesn't matter. And I know we've had experiences within our family and things like that, and I understand you have too, that kind of bring you. You really get that, So so that's the kind of movie that we're gonna provide, and so it's just a little different. My favorite movie was Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Steven Spielberg did a great job on that. I thought that was a pretty good rendition. Incidentally, my uncle George Van Tassel, he was a technical advisor on that film.
Is that right?
Yeah. So and that's the irony is that's one of my favorites. I think it was done in the late '70s or something like that. I thought, oh God, it's fantastic. Now, again, I mean, all the Star Wars movies. One thing I did a lot of research. It's so funny about, and I guess it's really hard to come up with a new concept with the whole UFO thing. Is that I was going through all the many movies that have been done with this genre, and all of them seem to make money. And I think and right now what's happening. It's about 3-to-1 as far as the foreign markets. It used to be the North American market was the preeminent market to get a North American theatrical release. Mm-hmm. Well, now several of the movies are really getting, as far as the revenue goes, are roughly 3-to-1. 3 foreign people used to give foreign rights away, but now it's 3-to-1, 3 foreign, 1 United States on a lot of these films, especially like Avatar, and anything with a science fiction or any of that whole thing, especially with the Orients and the Europeans, versus 4 people inside of a room, or kind of a comedy that they don't get.
Mm-hmm.
The genre is easily, because it's visual, a lot of it's visual, so it's easily transferable to foreign languages and things like that. So we've kind of hit the sweet spot as far as the whole demographics, too. We're happy about that. So we feel very, very blessed. I'm used to having a lot of heartbreak. Like I said, I've drilled a lot of exploration wells, and as you can probably imagine, I've had some real heartbreaks, mm-hmm. because when you're out there, it's 1 in 10. Your success ratio is usually 1 in 10. Maybe you can get a little bit better. Mine was better for a lot of years, but when you're out there, one thing I like about this is that certainly there are risks, but it's nothing comparison to what I've done in the past, and so it's a little bit more comforting. But still, it's a lot of work. We have 20-hour days, but when you have passion for something, you can do the hours.
Mm-hmm.
You don't mind doing the work. So, but other than that, we're excited, about being able to do that. Being able to do this, and I know. I know that people will like it, too. So,
yeah, I can't wait. It, I mean, this is so intriguing. Did you say your uncle passed away in a hotel?
Yes, he did. He passed away in a hotel in 1978, and it's really funny because. Well, it's not funny at all, but it's very strange because we didn't know why he was out there at that place, and it was actually in Santa Ana, and it was a very, he had recently had a checkup. I mean, he was getting a little older, but still he was in great shape, and he died of a heart attack, and he had within weeks had actually went to the doctor and was okay. But then also what happened is they stole all his files. Right after his death, somebody had broken into his office, and he had a lot of research, and they literally took everything out of his office. And so we've never been able to recover any of the data or information he had for the Integratron or some of the other inventions that he had. So it was really strange as far as how that occurred. We have no idea who did it. Like I said, a month prior to his death, he had a newsletter called The Proceedings, and it was his newsletter went out to everyone. He says he had exciting news, and he was a little bit on the depressed side prior because he couldn't access the information to really make this Integratron thing as operational as it is. And it also has the Integratron right now has tremendous benefits to people. A lot of celebrities go out there and they take sound baths, and the acoustical sound baths that they do out there are very, very healing. Many. Well, actually, the recent guy that went out there was Anthony Bourdain of. He's now on CNN, but he used to have this show on the Travel Network, and he was out there. But celebrities from Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin and Jay Leno. Yeah, he's done a couple of cameos out there in front of all that stuff. So there's several entertainment people. Charlize Theron. She and her husband go out there fairly regularly, and they take sound baths. So and they're very, very, very soothing, very, very calming. And most people know that if you can get into a deep sense of relaxation, that you're a lot better off. And more receptive to healing. So he had something there. I was not around at that time. We had since lived. Another thing happened too. This is my cousin, which was his grandson, came out and lived with us. We had moved closer into Los Angeles, and he had came out there, and he had lived on our couch for 4 months. I guess at the time, and this is also right, I guess there was a lot of UFO activity, and he was getting a lot of too much stuff. And I do remember him coming out and staying with us prior to this time. He says it was really there was both a lot of UFO activity, and there was a lot of government activity out there too. So there's a lot of things that are very, very mysterious about this whole thing. And now it's been so many years. I vaguely remember what was going on, but I talked to some of the old timers. Gabriel Green, he died I think a few years ago. He was one, and he says no one can understand why there was so much interest going on out there, because I guess there was an influx of UFO activity, and my uncle was very excited about being able to come a little step further with it. So, my uncle traveled in some very strange places. One of the things that he did in a convention, he was for a while there, he was actually talking to Eisenhower out there, and not only Eisenhower's wife. So it's just a real small world. And then all of a sudden, he had gotten on the bad side of the whole thing, and was deemed a dangerous person for some reason. But it's a mystery wrapped in an enigma, as far as an event goes. And we're still we're just perplexed. We don't know, and the more people we talk to that were of that era, the more mysterious the thing gets. So we just don't know. I mean, as far as what happened. But anyways, he'd be 103 years old this year, and he died in 1978. I think it's February the 9th. And the world was really, a lot of, he was more or less your common guy. He wasn't the rich and famous, thing, but everything he did, he literally did it for the common man. He always wanted to devise things and technology and health remedies and things like that for common people. And but at the same time, I mean, I'd never be surprised. Some of the people that that would come out there, even during the '60s. I met his name was Engelbert Humperdinck, and I don't know if you remember who he would be.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but we, I mean, you just wouldn't know. You wouldn't know who'd show up out there. So it was always kind of a fascinating thing. But that's the era. But we'll keep you in touch. What I'm going to do is just have if you have any listeners that are interested in a course, if they're in the area, it'd be a lot easier if they wanted to go out there and visit. Maybe we can time everything where they can go see the concert and get their face on the in the movies and all that stuff, and we'll feed them and that kind of thing. But yeah, go to our website. We'll have updates all the time there, and just kind of keep everyone apprised of our progress. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you our rough trailer. About it. I'm going to get that to you within the next day or so, okay. And we'll have it up on our website also. And we'll just keep you apprised of what's going on, and like I said, we look forward to making a movie people will be really happy to go see, and that's the best we can do right now. So, but yeah, that's where we're at, and I sure appreciate being on your show and talking with you about all this stuff, and it's just it's really great. I love. As you can tell, I get really animated, and I get carried away as far as on some of this stuff here, but it just comes so quickly. I just start remembering this, and that. And I know, oh gosh, maybe that'll be that. But anyways, Bruce, I appreciate you having me on your show and chatting with you about it, and look forward to keeping you updated. So
it's that passion, Chad, that makes this whole thing intriguing. And I told the people before we went on the air, or before we brought you on, I call shows like this real doozies. And I tell people before we bring our guest on, get up on the edge of your chair, because there's no need to sit back like you always do, because you're going to keep scrooching up, and by the time it's done, you'll be way up there on the front anyhow. So just get on up there, and that way you won't have to move around so much. But
that's great.
This was one of the real doozies. I mean, there's shows like this that for days after, I will literally just vibrate, and I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to say it, but I will vibrate from a show like this, because this was a real doozy. We've got to keep your uncle alive and out front, because this is so fascinating, and it's so relevant for this time in which we find our country. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. So yes, please keep me posted, and we'll keep visiting the website, and just keep on keeping on, Chad.
Yes, sir. I certainly will. You know what? I definitely will. Like I said, you hit the nail. I've got a lot of passion for this, and this is going to be good, and people are going to be happy to see it. And but thank you so much for having me on your show. It's fantastic. It's great. Anytime I can talk about this, I will talk about this until literally I'm sitting there in the back in the movie eating popcorn with the rest of everyone, and then I'll let the movie do the talking for me.
There you go.
Anyways, thank you, Bruce, for having me, and I really enjoyed being on your show, and this has just been nothing but a kick. So, anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All righty. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was Mr. Chad Meek, GiantRockMovie.com. I'll tell you what, I got so entwined, wrapped up in what he was saying that of course I didn't give the call-in number. Of course, we have that on, I don't know, umpteen places that most people know it by now anyhow, but intriguing. GiantRockMovie.com. GiantRockMovie.com. And Google George Van Tassel. And if you go to GiantRockMovie.com and you hit that little tab pull down thingy, you'll see where it says George Van Tassel. You can read that, and then Google, and interesting. So interesting. Now, I don't know if you're one of those people that do believe, or one of those people that don't believe, or one of those people that are just kind of somewhere in the middle, on the fence. But Google this stuff. Go to GiantRockMovie.com and read about this, and go where the links take you, and do your own research. You'll find some very interesting things that you didn't know about before. I've got to take a break. I'll be back in just a minute.
I'm in complete control. That's what I tell myself. I got a mind of my own. I'll be alright alone. Don't need anybody else. myself a good talking to. No more being a fool for you. When I see you, all I remember is how you make me wanna surrender. Damn, you're right. You're taking my breath away, making me wanna stay. Damn, you're right. For getting my hopes up high, for making me fall in love again. Damn, you're right. It's always the same. You say that you'll change. Somehow you never do, never do, you never. I believe all your lies, that look in your eyes. You make it all seem true. I guess I see what I wanna see. Or is it my heart deceiving me? With that look I know so well, I fall completely out of your spell. Damn, you're right. For taking my breath away, for making me wanna stay. Damn, you're right. For getting my hopes up high, for making me fall in love again. Damn, you're right. You keep deliberately deceiving me, making me say what I wanna see. Damn, you're right. For taking my breath away, for making me wanna stay. Damn, you're right. For getting my hopes up high, for making me fall in love again. Damn, you're right. For taking my breath away, for making me wanna stay. Damn, you're right.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was Hilda Lamas. She is going to be on the show next Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That lady can, as I say about many, many of the artists we have here, that lady can flat out sing. And she will be with us on the 20th. No, on the what's today? Today is the 11th. Wait a minute. Let me make sure, because if anyone can mess it up, it's the 18th. Next Tuesday night, the 18th, Hilda Lamas will be with us. We'll be showcasing her music. We'll be talking about her. She'll be telling us about her life, her passion, her aspirations, her goals, and all those things. So make sure you mark it down. Next Tuesday night, Hilda Lamas will be with us. And then on the 20th, we'll have Michael Callahan. We'll be showcasing his music, and we'll have Michael on with us. Next Wednesday night, remember this now, next Wednesday night, the 19th, the lady we had on last night, Linda Katz, oh, it was just getting good. You know what I'm saying? It was just getting good. And her telephone gave out. What did we do? Like 40 minutes, 50 minutes, something like that. But Linda was talking about mental health and the book that she has written, Surviving Mental Health, her story. Don't forget, go to her website, surviving-mentalhealth.com. survivingmental-illness.com. survivingmentalillness.com. Don't forget the hyphens between surviving and mental hyphen illness. survivingmentalillness.com by Linda Katz. She will be with us Wednesday night, a week from tomorrow, and we will pick up where we left off when she had trouble with her telephone. She is a very courageous young woman who has refused to allow the stigma of mental illness to stop her. She has refused to deny or to not say that she is recovering from mental illness. Very courageous young lady. Get her book, Surviving Mental Illness, Her Story, Linda Katz. She'll be with us. We are going to be on the road. What day is it? Well, I'll tell you what. If they took my gizmo away from me, I sure wouldn't know which end was up. I have a hard time knowing anyhow. The 13th, the 14th, and the 15th, we will be on the road. We're taking the show on the road. We'll be down in Virginia at a place called Tall Pines. We'll be there Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night. So make sure that you tune in. What's going to happen? We have no idea. We know about as much as you do. But one thing, we're going to do something. One man used to say, you know something, Espinal, let's go do something even if it's wrong. Unfortunately, a lot of times it was. Miss Hilda Long.
Por la calle yo lo encontré, de su sonrisa yo me enamoré. Te pregunté qué tú tienes, baby, con solo un beso te enamoraré. Te pregunté cuál es tu nombre, baby, como tú quieras te adoraré. No te detengas con tu cariño, quiero que te muevas tú conmigo. Para mi casa me lo llevé, su galanura me hizo caer. Me dijo, mira, ¿qué está pasando, baby? ¿Qué tú crees que me vas a hacer? Bebe despacio, no hay tanta prisa, que este amor durará toda la vida. Me dice, mira, mira mi cielo, ay, me estás quitando el mundo entero. Por la calle yo lo encontré, de su sonrisa yo me enamoré. Te pregunté qué tú tienes, baby, con solo un beso te enamoraré. Te pregunté cuál es tu nombre, baby, como tú quieras te adoraré. No te detengas con tu cariño,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, and countrymen. I see the train coming and the caboose is on the back of the train. Charlie and I are going to take a jump and get on that caboose as it passes by. But we want to say thank you to all of our friends down the street, around the corner, across this great nation, and around the world for stopping by and hanging out with us tonight. Aren't we glad that everybody stopped by? Yeah. They're going to keep the party going here. They're just getting wound up because they're back out on the dance floor. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're a great crowd that comes here each and every night, and we appreciate them. They'll keep the party going, and we're going to go join them a little bit. We're going to get out of this sound booth and go amongst the peoples. The peoples, yes, the peoples, plural, peoples. Anyhow, we want you to know there's a whole lot of love coming to you from the Funny Farm. We mean that. And wherever you are, if it's nighttime, you have a great night. If it's daytime, then you have a fine, fine day. Thank you to Chad Meek. Go to GiantRockMovie.com. Oh, so intriguing. So, whatever it is, wherever you are, until tomorrow night, same time, same station, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Spreaker Network. This is George Espinlab challenging you. Be kind one to another. Don't take no wooden nickels, you know what I'm saying? Be safe out there. Good night, everybody.